I'm excited to be bringing you today's episode to every single Black woman who has been told no and transformed it into a resounding watch me. This episode is for you. Black women, we are not just survivors, we are thrivers, we are architects of possibility. We are creators of majestic worlds that are beautiful for all to reside. We are designers of destinies. Black women, we carry centuries of resilience in our DNA. Our grandmothers' dreams pulsate through our veins. Their unbroken spirit is our rich inheritance. Their courage continues to be our compass. Today, we honor and celebrate our multidimensional brilliance, our careers, our families, our self love, and our sisterhood. These aspects of our lives aren't competing narratives, but they are interconnected paths of power. I have today joining me the beautiful, talented, and accomplished Liku Amadi joining me on today's episode. Liku Tiamati Esquire is an award-winning California licensed business attorney. Liku works with coaches, consultants, and expert service providers to establish a solid foundation for businesses with contracts, trademarks, and strategies for legal protection. She makes it a point to educate her clients on the what and why behind legal services to empower them to make legally informed business decisions so that they can protect their business and make more money. Liku is a proud mom and first generation Tanzanian. Liku is also the host of the Black Women Can Have It All private podcast, where she shares stories, strategies, and steps for Black women to define and live out their vision of what it means to have it all. So, on this episode, y'all, we are going to have just a nourishing conversation for your soul. This episode is going to be delicious. Like, I'm so excited for this episode. We are going to just have this collective exhale. It's going to be a revolution of faith, joy, strategy, and unapologetic self-determination. So, Black women, I want y'all to know that you are not too much. You are exactly enough as you have been beautifully designed to be. And as we join Miss Liku today, I want you all to just sit back and enjoy what she has to share. So let's get into today's episode right here and right now.
Welcome to my Feelings Over Tea podcast, where experts and everyday people will sip tea and spill the tea about all things life and mental health related. So grab yourself a cup of tea and join me, your host, Dr. Nikisha Tolbert Banks, for hot topics, helping you to cut through the muck of life and live your life well in my Feelings Over Tea podcast, right here and right now.
All right, Miss Liku Amadi, welcome to the show.
Thank you
This is
so
me
much for
round of
having me.
applause. Yes, 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 yes. Welcome, welcome, welcome. I am very excited to have you. I'm even more excited to get into this conversation today and talking about Black women can have it all.
Yes, ma'am. I'm excited to talk to you about it. We already had that preliminary conversation, which we should have recorded a
Listen,
little bit.
right?
We don't flush it out. So let's talk about Black women.
That pre-convo was lit, and we both said after the fact we should have been recording that, but
Yeah.
this one's just going to be as juicy and good. So let's just dive into it. You know, as Black women, we often wear many hats. We have the professional hat, the mother hat, the friend hat, family members. When you think about your role, and I say balance, but there really is no balance in life. but the balancing act, and maybe we should call it a juggling act. When you think about just all the many different hats that you wear, what has been the most challenging part of navigating these roles for you?
The most challenging part, I believe, has been accepting that I don't have to give 100 in each role,
Mm,
right?
mm,
We talked about in our previous conversation, I called it seasons, right? Like
yeah,
different things require different time and attention. And so with those many hats, they don't always have to be on all at the same time because, one is going to be fully covered, one might fall out from the top, one might be too tight on my head, right? Like I won't be able to wear each hat in the best way where it's going to make me look good and feel good, right? So some of them have to come
yeah,
out, they got to be switched out. And I think growing up, that's not what I've learned. I've learned like, yeah, each hat got to be 100. Each time you
yeah,
put 100 in everything that you do. So it's also been challenging in learning that that doesn't have to be the case. And
yeah.
then switching into this place where it's like, all right, today I'm gonna wear these two hats or these three hats, or I'm gonna just focus on this hat, or I'm in this space right now. So this hat gotta, be put up on the shelf for a few
Yeah.
weeks. That's been the challenge.
Yeah. And you know that it's so interesting, and I love the fact that you shared that, because a lot of times I think as women, we feel like we have to wear all the hats at 100%, go 100% in every single area. And I think it's not until we really look at the full picture to say, is that realistic?
Right.
Is it realistic that I can go 100 in every single aspect of my life, out the wheel of life? And it has all of the different components of your life. And you look at these different areas, whether religion, or when one area is low, do we have the ability to be able to expand into, that area of our life and restructure and reshift some things, right?
Right.
To kind of make it all better. So I guess a follow-up question that I have for you is, how do you maintain your sense of self amidst the demands? So now we're talking about kind of maybe the expectations that we put upon ourselves, but then how do you maintain just your own kind of self amongst the demands of life?
I think this might go when you said like it's not realistic, right?
Mhm.
I think we think it's realistic because we've seen it being done. For me, I saw my mom, my aunts, all the women in my
Yeah.
family holding it down, going to work, coming home, they were doing everything. I didn't see like burnout or impossibility. So as it pertains to this question, right? Like how do you kind of keep your sense of self when
Yeah.
we've been striving to kind of do all the things all our lives all the time because
Hmm.
we've seen it. So we're trying to aspire to this example that's been set before us or this expectation.
Right.
So there is no
Yeah.
sense of self. So now when you're asking like, how do you maintain that? I'm like, I recently found that. I
Mm-hmm.
recently found my sense of self after I feel like I've done all the things, right? The
Mm-hmm.
degrees and got this and did what I was supposed to do. Like, I'm like, okay, now what about me? Like, what brings me
Yeah.
joy, right?
Mm.
What makes me happy? What is on my mind when it's not running all the time, right? And I really leaned into just laughing. Like,
Yeah.
I need to laugh. I need to
Mm-hmm.
experience things that bring me joy, whether
Mm-hmm.
that's getting cute for brunch or
Right.
kicking it with my kids and watching some toddler movie that really is one of my favorite movies from back in the day.
Right.
Like, this, what is it that I like to do? What is it that makes me feel good, right? That makes
Mhm.
me feel like I'm just present and literally doing nothing but enjoying life. So I've had to
Yeah.
explore and find what that means in order
Mhm.
to just find out like what is that sense of self? Like what is,
Yeah.
my individuality? Like what does that look like?
Yeah. I love the concept of just sitting down with your kids, I often find that being able to see things through their eyes
Mhm.
makes it easier to navigate because as adults, we forget about what I call the oohs and the ahs, right? So you can say, oh, wow, look at the CVS store, or the Walgreens store, the pharmacy, building. Wow. And it's just like, same building. We've seen it a million times, but everything is so magical to our
Mhm.
children. And I think that we forget sometimes the beauty of moments, days,
Mhm.
things, right, that our children can bring back to us. So I love that you've incorporated even that piece to give yourself permission to be
Mhm.
able to embrace those things that really are what we might say the small things, but they're really huge in how we navigate our
Right.
journey.
And I
Yeah.
think also having children, to your point about the oohs and the ahs, like, we still have an inner child, right? Like,
Yes.
what is it to be childlike? And through my kids, I've learned like these kids, they don't care. They don't got no worries. Like
Right.
they just be eating, running around, sleeping. And it's because like they know they're being taken care of. They know there's
Yes.
always going to be someone to take care of them. At the end
Yeah.
of the day, everything is going to be all right, right? Like they have that. So they don't have those like deep worries that are taking them away from, let me
For
go pick
sure.
up this rock and inspect it and throw it over
Right.
there and just enjoying that, right? Like,
Right.
so for me, I've really had to also strengthen my relationship with God too, and believe
Mm,
that like I'm always going to be taken care of as well. Like I may have
yeah.
these responsibilities and these things on my mind, but at the end of the day, I need to enjoy life. I need to enjoy the little things, my children, my husband, my
Yeah.
friendships, my family, because
Hmm.
I'm always going to be taken care of, even if it doesn't seem like it in the
Right.
moment. So also having that type of just knowledge and security, like it decreases that weight of, oh, I have to do everything or I have to show
Hmm.
up for everyone in every way,
Hmm.
because there's always that, like a child, like I know my father's going to take care of me.
When you talk about how your faith plays a part in your everyday life and journey, I think that like you said, that inner child that is there. And it
Mhm.
doesn't mean that necessarily that's unhealed stuff, right? Because obviously I'm a therapist. And so anytime people hear the inner child now, they always think of like traumatic and negative things. But that inner child can also be that part that we forget about that takes us back to our childhood when maybe things were good and we laughed a lot more and we just did silly things and we played and we enjoyed again those things that we did as children, but that doesn't mean that we can't incorporate that into our now and
Right.
or recreate that to establish some piece of joy or
Mhm.
some kind of fulfillment in happiness and
Right.
joy and laughter, like all the things that you shared. I wonder, as we're talking about navigating just the journey and the many hats, there's often this unspoken expectation that Black women can do it all. And you've kind of alluded to that with just talking about the familial path, right? You sing your aunts and your mom and grandmothers as we see it in our Black communities with Black women. We watch them do it with grace. We watch them do it with ease, like you said. I even think about my mom and my grandmother and my aunts. I remember like looking back when I was a kid, like thinking, wow, they just do everything so effortlessly. Grandma's making homemade biscuits and knocking them out in like 5 minutes. Biscuits go in the oven, from scratch and navigating this and doing that. And it's just like, wow, how did they do all of that? And we still felt loved and cared for and nurtured. How have you navigated the pressures of living up to societal expectations?
Mhm.
And then another part of that is what has that experience been like for you?
Ooh, society's expectations.
Listen.
Well, first, how I've navigated that is like I was compliant. I've been compliant
Mm,
for a very long time in terms of like get good grades, get your education,
mm,
get your degree, and then go get a job. And then, like
yeah.
I my navigation through that was initially compliance. Let me do all of these things so I make sure I'm on point, right?
Mhm.
Not knowing that it's really like in society's eyes, but so I can get the job and I can get this and I can be respected and people don't look at me as angry. Let me act all these ways, right? In
Mm,
law school, like let me get the good grades or let me be quiet because sometimes my opinion be too long-winded and I don't want people to
mm.
think X, Y, and Z, or I'm 5'9", so let me wear flats instead of heels to the networking event because somebody might
That
be
part.
intimidated by me, right?
Intimidated,
That
right.
part. That's a whole other podcast
Yeah,
episode.
right.
But it's all those things, right? And you think it's normal. You think
Hmm.
like this is what I got to do, like this is how I got to show up. And
Yeah,
then yeah, you have those thoughts where it's just like, mm, am I suppressing myself?
for
Am I
sure.
dimming my own light? Like
Yeah.
why am I making accommodations for someone else's comfort? Like I like to wear
Hmm.
heels, so
Hmm.
if I want to go in the networking event and be 6'1", then so
Right.
be it, right? Like I like to
Yeah.
talk about the cases in class. So if the only one raising my hand all of the time, then so be it. So
Yeah.
I coming out of law school, I learned that like, especially in a profession that's just so old and white and male, is just like,
Hmm.
the way to keep up is to be yourself, right? The way to be
Hmm.
competitive is to be yourself. And that's something that I slowly had to learn, even in my first job. Like I just slowly had to learn that. So my
Hmm.
navigation went from being compliant to like, okay, I've done all these things, like I've made it do what it do. Like,
Yeah.
what's my bag now? Like,
Right.
let me get in
Right.
my
Yeah.
bag. Like, no one can take this degree away from me. No one can take away these academic accomplishments. No one can take
Hmm.
away my gift of gab. Like,
Yeah.
just starting to lean into all those things and realize, like, actually, I'm the one with the power, right?
Hmm.
Like, you might have the job offered for me,
Yes.
but you can't run this law firm without me and my expertise and my hard work and my hours.
Yeah.
Just like, so starting to lean in all of that and just be like, hold up. This is not what
Something's
I thought it
off.
was.
Yeah.
Exactly. Are
Yeah.
y'all trying to
Yeah.
play me? So just really leaning into that has been the
Yeah.
best part of the navigation. And so now, with regard to society's expectations, I try to live like they don't exist, right? Which is
Mm,
really hard to do because the way these systems are set up, it's
for
all
sure.
ingrained and everything. But I very much try to lead with like what brings me joy. Or is it
Hmm.
something that I want to do? Or is this something that's in the
Yeah.
best interest of my family and my children and my
Hmm.
marriage and like my mom, right? Like I try to think of it from that lens. Will God be pleased with these
Hmm.
decisions that I'm making or how I'm moving?
Hmm.
Is it out of fear or is it out of, faith? Like
Yeah.
nervous about doing it because it's something new, or am I nervous because I know it's going to fail, right? Like
Yeah.
trying to think about those things actively is really what helps me navigate now. And in terms of like Black women having it all, that's all like against society's expect,
Hmm.
because society expects so much of us. They expect us to
Hmm.
be twice as good, three times as good, and we're always at least 10 times as good, but then they expect us to be quiet. They
Right.
expect us to be humble, and they expect us to
Hmm.
fall in line, and they expect us to not be better than them. Like,
Yeah.
so all of those things are very frustrating, and it makes it harder to live life. It makes it harder to live a quality life. Like when you
For
talk about
sure.
women's mental health, like it's
Hmm.
not just the stress about keeping up with life, but it's about trying to survive all of these systemic circumstances that have been placed on us and not
Yeah.
even realizing that this is something we can actually step away from. So now
Hmm.
my navigation is more so like what serves me and my interests and the people that I love and care
Yeah.
about versus what is pleasing to society. Because I found that
Hmm.
the latter is
Hmm.
still hard and
Of
difficult, right?
course.
Like there's
Yeah.
still things to learn,
Yeah.
but it's a lot more freeing,
Yes.
which
That's
is
the word.
amazing for my mental health.
Yeah, that freeing part, it really is a saving grace for your mental health, right?
Hmm.
And I think that everybody has to find their freedom
Right.
in life. And again, as we're talking about Black women, it's giving yourself permission to navigate the journey according to your own desires and expectations, right? What do I
Right.
expect of myself? What makes me feel good? What helps me to sleep better at night? And sometimes those are the exact things that keep us up at night because of all of these different societal expectations. As
Hmm.
you're talking about the systemic barriers that are put in place for Black women that we constantly have
Intentionally.
to
Yeah.
overcome, right?
Mhm.
And so it does make it difficult, but I love that we're sharing in this conversation today because my hope is that there will be Black women that listen to this that say, that's where I'm stuck. I'm at a crossroads right now, or I haven't been wearing the heels to, this networking event. I'm going to start wearing my heels, or I'm going to start wearing my natural hair, or
Right.
I'm going to start speaking up in the meetings because there have been plenty of meetings that I've been in. I've been sitting at these tables and I'm talking, and I notice I look around and I might be the only Black woman or Black person in the
Mhm.
entire room.
That part.
Right. And you get the looks and the stares like, you know what they're thinking. Oh, wow, she's educated. Or, oh, wow, like,
Right. I
what?
thought she was the
She's speaking.
receptionist.
Right. No, 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 no. I got my seat. I earned my seat at this table. Right.
Mhm.
And so I love how you're talking about the barriers that you've overcome. And
Mhm.
then I also love that you talk about how freeing it is. And when we talk about mental health, I like that's a big piece for me because I work with a lot of Black women who struggle in these various spaces because of all the things that we've talked about. And you've talked about how this kind of journey for you has been a freeing experience when you consciously made the decision to live for Liku and not for the systems or the powers that be. How do you prioritize your own emotional and mental well being, juggling these different demands?
Yeah, yeah.
Mother, career, family life, right? Being a
Mhm.
wife, mom. How do you navigate all of that?
When I think about juggling, I think about dropping the things that
Mm,
right?
yeah,
Like, unless you've been juggling for 10 years
right.
professionally, like things are gonna drop. So
Yes.
I've tried to juggle before and I'm like, all right, yeah, pick it up, like it doesn't last long. And
Yeah.
so that's how it's been. Right. When I talk
Mhm.
about Black women having it all or trying to make decisions that are intentionally not in alignment with societal and
Mm,
systemic expectations, like it's a work in progress. Like I do not
yeah,
need to communicate that I've figured everything out and that
for
everything is
sure.
on point and, I'm the one doing and teaching and no, I'm just sharing what I've learned in my experience as far. So when we're talking about how do I juggle, sometimes things fall, and
Yeah,
sometimes I realize I have to pick it up, or sometimes I'm like, you know what? That needs to stay on the floor right now because I don't
for
need to,
sure.
juggle 5 things. I need to juggle 3 things, right? And
Yeah.
learn how to do that. Or if
Mhm.
I'm juggling, 5 different colors, I'm like, you know what? Let's swap out the
Mhm.
orange one for the green one because in this season, that's what that's required, right? Like,
Yeah.
so juggling is something that has to be practiced. It's strategic for
Mhm.
me, it's timely for me, and just recognizing that like it's something that really has to be learned in a
Yeah.
way that's fitting for me and what's going on in my life and my
Mhm.
family's life and
Mhm.
my business and my marriage and all of those things like the rhythm is always going to change, right? The juggling
Yeah.
rhythm always going to change. So
Mhm.
I try to look at it like it's not an exact science
Yeah.
and really just see like, okay, what in my life like needs to stay up in the air, like for sure,
Mhm.
no matter what, like my relationship with God, right? That's not
Yeah.
something that I want to drop on the floor. That's something
For
that
sure.
sets the tone and the rhythm to juggle everything else. Like
Yeah.
my marriage, right? The way that I show up in motherhood and making sure it's from a quality and rested space, right?
Mhm.
So I can serve my children, so I can
Yeah.
serve my husband, so that I can
Mhm.
serve my clients when it comes to my business, right?
Yeah.
So work in progress. That
For
is what it
sure.
is, and I've accepted that versus trying to lean into old perfectionist me and be like,
Right.
"Look, everything gotta be on point, polished, no dust, don't drop it
Yeah.
on the floor," or the negative part of that, like when you do drop things on the floor as
Yeah.
a perfectionist or someone who believes that they have to have everything in the air all the time, it's like you
Mhm.
yourself, you crash out too.
For
Not only do
sure.
you drop it, like, it's not okay to drop it. So, balancing and juggling have also, like, very much required me to step away from that
Mhm.
version of me that was like, everything has to be up in the air and it needs to be
Yeah.
Olympic level juggling, or
Mhm.
we're not juggling at all.
Yeah. Ooh, Liku, you
More.
giving us some you done gave us breakfast, lunch, and dinner, honey. Breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Listen, this piece, I want to share this, and this was from our pre-wrap. We were talking before we actually started recording the podcast. And one of the things that you said was, well, hopefully my baby will stay asleep. That's nap time for my baby. And I said to you, and girl, if the baby wakes up, we're just going
Mhm.
to have a baby on the podcast.
You did. Mhm.
And I meant that because I think, again, as we're talking about how we navigate things, that's a part of life, right?
Mhm.
And I think that, and I'll speak for myself, there was a point in time where everything had, like you said, it had to be polished, it had to fit in the proper container. I couldn't put, a circle in a square box, and I couldn't put a triangle in the square box, or, whatever. Like everything had to have its place. And I got to a point to where I was just like, this can't happen anymore, because I found
Mhm.
myself, like you said, just exhausted trying to navigate it all so perfectly.
Mhm.
And I think some of the expectations that I had on myself were actually the societal expectations, where then I placed this bigger expectation on myself, right? But when you talk about, one word that you used was alignment and having to have it all figured out. Again, I think when we give ourselves permission to just not know,
Mhm.
like that is freeing in itself, to be able to say, I don't know. Today, I don't know. Tomorrow is going to be a different day. I'll see what the next day brings. I will figure it out. But right now, I don't have to know. And I know when my clients will say to me, well, I just don't know. And I say to them, but do you have to know right now in this moment? Like maybe you can figure it out. Maybe you can navigate that. The kind of that breath, and you can just see them like releasing all of that pressure. Maybe
Mhm.
that's a good word, about not having to have it all figured out. Releases something that then allows them to be able to think in a more clear space. I love the word alignment when you talk about that some things are aligned now
Mhm.
because that's the space that you're in. You talked about seasons earlier. I think that there is alignment in seasons, and
Mhm.
every season has their own thing, right? So
Right.
for me, I'm in the Midwest. We're probably not going to see snow in the summer because there's a specific season for snow, right? In
Right.
winter. In
Yes.
summer, there's certain things that you're going to see in summer because that is that season, and things are perfectly aligned in each season. So, as you think about this alignment and how you navigate things, what role does your community or support systems play in helping you to manage the demands of your daily life?
They play such a huge role. And I'll give an example from what you just said. Like sometimes we don't see where we need help. So I did
Mm.
say that in our previous conversation, like, look, the baby might wake up. Hopefully she take a nap. And she has been
Yeah.
napping, by the way. Just but
Yeah.
and you were like, if she wakes up, then just bring on the call. And like, I knew that that was okay, but I
Yeah.
also gave that disclaimer because I didn't know if you thought it would be okay. And then you
Sure.
reminded me, like, yeah, it is okay, right? So
Mhm.
having community that reminds me on a day-to-day basis, like, it's okay, like,
For
chill.
sure.
I very
Yeah.
much need that because
Yeah.
I'm trying to, not trying, but am making this transition into a much more just easeful life, or, a life that is in alignment with, where
Mhm.
we want to go as a family. And I say as a family because day to day, like,
For sure.
I'm here, like
Yeah.
mom, wife, a manager of the household, like still, running this business, like that's what I have to juggle. So, when I cancel calls with my clients and I'm just like, look, like, the kids are home sick today, and they're like, that's okay. Or like a
Yeah.
lot of my clients are like, oh, the baby's awake. Can
Yeah.
I see her? And
Right.
it's like, okay, like, you're
Right.
patient, you can see
With
whatever you
the
want,
right.
like, yes, you can. Or like sometimes my husband has to come home and be like, yo, like you've had the kids all day, like you don't have to cook. Like, yo, just,
Yeah.
just rest, sit down, like I could just go get something to eat. And
Right.
like I know these things are okay, but my
Mhm.
community, is there to be a very helpful reminder
Yeah.
because sometimes we just get caught up in like
Mhm.
still trying to do all the things or trying to
Right.
now do it to our own standards because then we
Yeah.
have own standards and expectations for ourselves and we still want to live up to that.
Mhm.
Giving yourself grace and patience is something that has to be learned and practiced. So I'm very
Yeah.
much still in the midst of learning and practicing and making that a habit as well. Even my
Yeah.
mom, will be like, yeah, bring the kids over for a few days. Like, you guys go out, and we're
You're
like,
like,
oh,
"What?
word?
What?"
Okay.
You're right.
You can't say nothing but a word. The bags are packed right now. Actually, ding dong,
Yeah.
we're at the door, right? Like having that, and even my mother-in-law, my mother lives a lot closer than my mother-in-law, who's like 3 hours away.
Okay.
Whenever she visits, she's just like, yeah, drop the kids off over here. You guys go ahead. And, so it's nice to have that community and that support that's like, let me help alleviate these things.
Yeah.
Like, not
Mhm.
that they're always burdens, but, you need some time for yourself or you need to
Yeah.
rest or, yeah, you've had the kids this whole time, like, go do your work at the library so you're not interrupted or
Sure.
celebrating yourself too.
Yeah.
Celebrate yourself. I love my husband because if I'm like, babe, I made this much this month, he's like,
Yeah.
that's what I'm talking about. Let's go.
Yeah.
Or
Right.
like, you've really been consistent, or, I wanted to take you to dinner because you did this. And you're not even
Yeah.
realizing sometimes yourself, like, yes, small wins are important, but
Mhm.
like they need to be celebrated and like
Yeah.
they need to be acknowledged or they're worth that. So
Yeah.
having community is a very good just way of having reminders in your life
Mhm.
to like, continue to take it easy and celebrate yourself and
Yeah.
accept and receive help from
Mm.
people who want to help you.
Now, you talk about a whole nother podcast. Listen, that accept and
Listen,
receive
I
help,
heard it when
ma'am.
I was saying it. I was like, it's a whole nother one.
Yes, that part is, again, as when we talk about Black women, this superwoman syndrome, right? That's out there and talking about we throw on this cape and we flying from here to there with everything up under our wings, right? Just feeling like we do have to navigate this in such a big way by
Mhm.
ourselves. It's a myth. So
Absolutely.
whoever is listening right now and they are like, I got this cape on, take that cape off, rip the cape off, cut the cape up, burn it, whatever you got to do with it. Because I'm using some of the words that we've talked about in being in alignment, in being free, in celebrating ourselves, there is this piece of knowing when to stop, when to slow down, when to
Mhm.
ask for help, right?
Yes.
When to just take a moment to reflect and, figure out where are we in the midst of all of this? Because day in, day out, we get into this mundane routine of we got to be here by this time, do this, do this, do that. And
Mhm.
it's every day. Some of our weeks probably look exactly the same if we're not reflective of how we're spending our time. You talk about just being able to take your children to your mother or your mother-in-laws and just allowing the help to help you.
Mhm.
And I think that having those people around us who can also see when we
Mhm.
need something is just
Right.
as important to say, let me call my girl and let's just schedule this girls' night, or let me help my daughter or this family, or let me come in and just be here with the kids or the grandkids or whatever as community. And I
Mhm.
think that that support system piece is so critical because again, that filters back into our mental health,
Right.
right? For people who feel like they don't have anybody, that's where they're met with this resistance and this struggle.
Yes. Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
village is important. One of my girls actually just called me like last week. She's like, "Yo, you good?" Or she texted me. She was like,
Yeah.
"Good." Just checking in. I'm like, "Yeah, I'm good." She's like,
I
"Look, I know
love
you
it.
be trying to do all the things, so you want to go to dinner or something like that? I'm here if you ever want to talk." And I was like, "You know what? I do need that. I
Yeah.
do need that." And we went to
Yeah.
dinner and,
Love it.
she was just asking about how things were going. She's a mother herself. She has more
Mm,
experience than me. And we talked through it and I was so grateful. I was
yeah.
like, I did need this because usually I'm like, nah, she's like, I know you're a private person. But I was
Yeah.
just like, thank you so much for always
Mhm.
checking in and reaching out and
Yeah.
just knowing from your own experience, right? Like
Yeah.
she's a mother and a business owner and just like
Mhm.
the one who holds it down for her family. And
Yeah.
I was just so grateful to have that because again, like we can know what's good for us and what we need, but we don't always exercise that because of the day to day and we're kind of
Right.
just emotions. So yeah, that
Yeah.
was very critical and it was just a huge release and comfort and reminder that I do have that in my corner.
Mhm.
And even if I don't tap into it, that there is someone who is thinking of me enough to reach out and, set up dinner and all of that. So yeah, 100%
Yeah.
important.
So I'm gonna put it in this plug here right now. So whoever is listening, check on your strong friends, check
Mhm,
on your friends who are business owners, check on your friends who are mothers, check on your friends who are married. Just check on your people, right?
mhm.
Because again, we can get into these places and spaces where we have our own stuff where it's just like, okay, I'll do it tomorrow. And then tomorrow comes, and then it begins to be the next day. And soon it's a month, and then soon it's a
Right.
year, and that whole nine. But like you said, to just send a text to say you're good. I call that my home girl. I'll send it out to people, and it's like this home girl check in, like, you good? Sometimes I'll send prayers. Sometimes I'll send a funny meme, right? And I might sit and take 5 minutes to just send it to 5 or 10 people, but that's just to say, like, yeah, you're being thought of. I
Mhm.
might,
And that goes a long way.
it does go a long way because, again, you never know on the other side what that person is dealing with and what that person
Right.
is going through. So I'm glad that you have those people and that support around you. And furthermore, being able to understand what that means for you, right?
Mhm,
That you're empowered by the strength of your circle, which
mhm.
ultimately gives you that strength that you're pulling back into your family and your children.
Right.
So, we've been talking about all of these different just components of being a Black woman and navigating these different spaces. When we talk about Black women can have it all, what does the phrase having it all mean to you?
Great question. Great question. It's a phrase that is being forever defined. Right now, what having it all means for me is joy and ease.
Mm,
Because, with all of the hats that I'm wearing, there is a lot going on. there's a
Mhm.
lot to take care of. There's a lot to work around. There's a lot to schedule. There's a lot of people and things and elements to consider. And so, above all of that, I want to experience joy. I want to experience as much ease in doing all of those things as possible, right? Like, I
Mhm.
don't there can be a lot to do, but it doesn't have to be hard to the extent that I can allow it. So again,
Mhm.
asking for and receiving when people offer help or
Yeah.
just doing little things that, makes it easier for me to move along. Like I just talked about the other day, ordering groceries.
Yeah.
When I found out that you could do that via a app and they drop
Ma'am,
the groceries off,
they didn't know what they did during COVID. That's when it started for me.
that part, I'm just like, it's just
Saved
little
my life.
things. Yes, that all those things add up. They save so much time, they save
Yes.
so much energy, and for
Yes.
Black women, that's critically important because, when we look at stress and how it impacts our health
Yeah. Mhm.
physically, like literally diseases,
Yeah.
form in our bodies because we're not at ease and because we're
Yes.
doing all of these things. So right now, having it all for me looks like, just what can I do to make things as easeful as possible while I'm, juggling all of the things and trying to wear all the hats and figure out which one needs to be on or off, how I can do that with ease and then also still experience joy, right?
Mhm.
Because again, there's a lot of things going on, but that doesn't mean that it's not a happy time, it's not a joyful time, that there aren't things for me to be grateful for. And gratitude
Yeah.
for me has
Mhm.
is another thing that saved my life. The other day, I went to
Yeah.
the park to do some work and there was a parking spot right in front of the library. I said, Lord,
Thank you.
I thank you. Just little things. Every time somebody reaches out to me for business, like, hey, I heard that you do this. Is this something you can help me with? Thank you,
Mhm.
God. Like, even if
Mhm.
it's not something that I can help them with yet, and I don't even
Yeah.
know, but just the fact that someone, is in my inbox and found me,
Yeah.
wants to talk business, like, I'm
Yeah.
grateful for that. Like, oh, I
Yeah.
almost tripped over that, thing over there. Like,
For
thank you,
sure.
God, that I did not, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So gratitude too,
Mhm.
joy, gratitude, and ease. That's
Mm.
right now. That is having it all for me in this season.
Yeah. And I love the fact that you defined having it all as kind of a seasonal thing, right? That it doesn't mean that at all times you have everything all at once, but in various seasons, having it all may look different. But
Mhm.
today in this season, you describe it as joy, ease, and gratitude. I love that.
There's a lot going on. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think as you talk about, and we've had this discussion today about all of the different hats that we wear, and like you said,
Mhm.
all of the stressors and, ways that we can get stuck in just trying to navigate the journey, just infiltrating gratitude into your day, into your week can go a long, long way.
Yeah.
And it can look different for every person, right? It can look different in your season. I mean, and we know we're in the holiday season, which there tends to be a lot more gratitude in this season, I think, where people are more generous just with their time and things of that nature. But as we talk about Black women and us having it all, and we're talking about this act of gratitude, think of ways that you can plug in, whether it's within your community or it could be a virtual community. It doesn't, it just depends on your time, your resources, and your ability to be mobile, right? For some people, if they're not able to be mobile, there's other things that you can do virtually, right? And I think a lot of times when we talk about giving and gratitude, people always go to financially. And there's so many other ways to show gratitude. So, listen, legacy and family dynamics. This is a big part of what you've talked about as we've just been sharing in this episode about being a mother and a business owner as a professional. and a daughter. You talked about your mom. How do you view the concept of legacy? And then how do you ensure that you are building something meaningful for your future generations that are within your home, those beautiful little people, but then
Mhm.
also just for future generations while also honoring your own journey?
Yeah, when I think about legacy, I think about things that are being passed down,
Mhm,
not just to, my children, but to the times that come after me. Uh,
mhm.
so what I really want to do is pass down tools. I mean, pass down wealth for sure,
Yeah.
but tools so that, living life is easier, navigating life is
Mhm,
easier, not just for the benefit of my children, but again, just in the times, specifically Black
mhm,
women, right? This
mhm,
understanding that we get to define our way of being and, what it means to unlearn these old ways of being and practices and habits that
mhm.
were set in stone by people
Yeah,
who prey on our demise, systems that
yeah.
don't support us and do the exact opposite, stress us out, kill us
Mhm.
even. So that's what I think about with just like legacy is passing down tools to navigate life easier.
Yeah. I love the passing down, that generational education, that generational knowledge that transcends anything that our children can ever learn in a book, but it's what they
Mhm,
can learn in our family books and our family knowledge that we share. And I think that that piece is so important because as we look at these various systems and how they're set up, they're not always set up for Black women to thrive. Some of these systems are set up so that Black women do fail. Some of these systems are set up not to ensure that we are healthy, but to ensure that we remain unhealthy, right? So
mhm,
that we continuously feed dollars into those systems. But I love that we have the ability, as you're speaking about it, to be able to gather this information about our experiences
mhm,
and gather this information from our family, our mothers and grandmothers and great grandmothers, and as far back as we can to pull all of this knowledge in to keep it relevant. I think sometimes people think, wow, when I say great grandmother, or even great great grandmother, that was so long ago and nothing back then still applies to now. But if we
mhm,
really look at the trajectory of time, there
mhm.
are many things for Black women that are still relevant.
Oh, yeah. 100%.
So, Liku, as we go to just wrap up our conversation today, I told y'all it was going to be yummy, delicious, and all the things in between. I want people to just have an understanding of what it means to have it all, but just from you, kind of one final thing that you want to share that's on your heart to share with people who are listening to this episode today. And maybe they're in a space where they're down. Maybe they're down on their luck. Maybe they're just down. Maybe they're at that crossroads and not necessarily sure where to go next. What would you share with them?
I would share that one, Black women can have it all so long as they're the ones who define what having it all looks like for them. I
Mhm,
would also share that Black women, the woman listening to this, you are worthy
mhm,
because a lot of things we don't do or we act in accordance with the belief that, I don't deserve this or I'm not
mhm,
worthy of this yet, right?
mhm,
When
mm,
worth is inherent, like you're born with it, like you're worthy of whatever you want to have, however you want to live. So you already have that much more access to what your version of having it all looks
Mhm.
like. And there will be people along the way, there will be relationships that no longer align with what you're trying to do and where you're trying to go. And it's okay to either let go of them
Mhm.
or minimize how they show up in your life.
Mhm.
There's going to be other obstacles, and there's going to be lots of unlearning and you wanting to slip back into old ways of being while you're trying to pursue this new path.
Mhm.
And it's okay for those things to happen. Just know that your actions, trying to choose my words carefully, just know that you would want your actions to be more so in alignment with the life that's best for you, which is not always going to be something comfortable to choose. But ultimately, like, what you want your life to look like is in your hands. That's
Mhm.
very, very powerful, and you got this.
Ooh, yes, 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 yes. All of that. How can people get in contact with you? Where can they follow you?
Yeah, I'm a LinkedIn girly, you
Yeah,
know,
LinkedIn.
through if you try to find me on social media, that will be the place. So Liku Amadi on LinkedIn is where you can find me. You can feel free to send me a DM. My DMs are always open. I'm always talking to people. And Black Women Can Have It All is a private podcast that I host. I drop one episode per week. We are 52 episodes in, a year worth of episodes.
Nice. Ooh,
Everyone
yes.
is just some type of step or gem
Love
or
it.
perspective shift just based on my journey so far in trying to, redefine what it means to have it all as a Black woman myself. So that's all that I'm sharing. But if you think that would be helpful, then
Mhm.
you can go to blackwomencanhaveitall.com and subscribe to the podcast. Subscribing is required because sometimes barriers of entry are needed for spaces
Mhm.
intended for Black women.
Yes.
It's 100% free to access and listen to.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. So, y'all, Liku has told you how you can connect with her. The Black Women Can Have It All private podcast. She has given you the website to connect with her. You can also DM and or connect with her on LinkedIn. This was food for thought.
Good, I'm glad.
Yes, I love it. As we wrap up today's episode, Black women, I want you to know that you are not defined by your circumstances. Know that the barriers that exist where you are can be overcome. Just put your supports in place, do some check-ins, checking in on your mental health. Take the time to come up with a plan if you're in a space where you feel like you need to be elsewhere. Just know that you have the ability to do that within inside of yourself and don't feel like you have to do just because it's the norm, but go outside of yourself so that you can be the extraordinary person that you were meant to be. I am your host, Dr. Nikisha Tolbert Banks. I am so excited to have had Miss Liku Tiamati Esquire joining me today for this awesome episode. Y'all stay tuned for the next episode. Thank y'all for joining me today. Take care, be blessed, and we'll see y'all soon.